Hey, hi. So, today we are going to talk about how we have developed under the back-end technology side. What happened in last, say, 10, 12 years? How we reached up to microservices, maybe. I mean, that's the latest back-end trend. So, how did we reach there and from where we started, say, around 10 years back? My career is not more than 12 years at this point of time, so I can tell only about that. And that is most relevant, I guess, for all of us at this point of time. So, there was a time when everything used to happen on mainframe. That is before my time. So after that, the concept of that was the time where it was thin client and server situation. Uh, Not even thin. It used to call dummy client, I guess. So there used to be monitor and keyboard which is connected to the mainframes. That's how it is. It was. I'm not very sure. Uh, but then came n layer applications, right? 3 tier application, 4 tier application. So there came the concept of layer and tier. Uh, in that age, that was the time when these things came up. Java EE or .NET was not there, but ASP applications based on IIS server. Uh, when Java came in, it was a major game changer. So Java came up with something called Java J2E. So Java 2 Enterprise Edition, because that time Java version was, I guess, 1.2 or 2 or something like that. So that's where it started, J2EE. So in that we had set of technologies like JSP, servlet. Basically, it started with servlet, but then eventually came JSP, and that is how we had the backend and the front end on JSP. The backend was all Java EE stuff, and mostly that time the hot topic was EJBs, Enterprise Java Beans. Like, uh, say, from at the time of 2007 6, if you are if you are EJB guy, you are like super valued. But it was very clumsy. But somehow it was like that, and it was being used. So backend was mostly EJB, and front end was with JSP. JSF also came eventually. Um, but what happened was that EJB was so clumsy, so heavy, and so uh, heavy basically, and so complex to do. Mr. Rod Johnson came up with something called a Spring. Now Spring came up, which made things a lot easier. Like, it was lightweight. Spring came up with a lot of frameworks. Started with the core, then came into a Spring MVC, where you can develop web applications, and eventually the Spring stack evolved. Today we have Spring Cloud and whatnot. So I'm not going into the Spring details, but that that came. During that time, there was a concept, or there was also a concept of web services, which was evolving. And Java EE had a specification called JAX. Uh, JAX what? WS. So it was about soap based REST services. Now, what happens in soap based REST services is that, sorry, I'm sorry, it is not soap based REST services, it is soap based web services. What happens in soap based web services is that the communication between client and server, or the caller or the server, happens in terms of, just a minute, happens in terms of XML messages, right? So XMLs were being used uh, to communicate. That was SOAP, and it is not only XML. It had a whole, structure which used to called as SOAP envelope. There's a header, request, response, body kind of structure. So you need you send a message in a SOAP envelope. You receive a SOAP envelope in which there's the response. But it was also very complex structure, and things were there. eventually at that duration the concept came up of SOA, service oriented architecture. What happened in why it came first of all? The thing is, um, it it was the perfect age of monolith, and it used to be huge. And if you need to make your services smaller, there was no way. You build it like big one. Then came the concept of service oriented architecture, SOA, which said that we can split our services and the consumer can choose whatever they want to use. So it became service oriented architecture. Each thing will become a service, and the whole architecture will depend on the composition of those services. So it was like, in a way, you can say something like microservice. Micro is very small, but service oriented, like there would be an order service. Now order would have order placement, order cancellation, order, everything related to order would be the order service. Everything related to customer would be the customer service. Everything related to say search would be the search service. So these used to be huge but service oriented. Okay, so there were two concepts came at the same time, almost same time. One was the SOA, another one the SOAP web services. So, so SOA and SOAP web service got linked so tightly in a very confused way that people started thinking that if you are doing SOA, the way of doing SOA is SOAP. While if you are doing SOAP, it means you are doing SOA. But it was not true. You can do SOA without SOAP. You can do it in various other ways. And if you are developing something using SOAP, it does not mean you are doing SOA. It can be a simple, normal, big monolith. It does not need to be the SOA. And probably if you do not have the perception of or the architecture of SOA approach, no matter what you write will not turn into SOA. Okay, you write SOAP, you write old servlet, it does not matter. But it was a huge confusion, like we have today. Right? The moment you say REST API, people start calling REST API is equal to microservice nowadays. So anyways, that was the time when we had the SOAP and web services evolving together, getting mixed together, getting confused together. Meanwhile, Spring was growing. Spring came up eventually with Spring Boot and things like that. It came later, but it came. Before that happened, the REST APIs. Now, REST APIs was something which was different, lightweight, and it was super hyped at that point of time. And it was based on HTTP protocol. Still, being new technology, people were not very much ready to move towards that. Enterprises were not. Only the public services like Google and Facebook, those people came up with the REST things. And then the other concept was REST was not secure. The OAuth was not at that time. OAuth 2.0 was not there in place. It came eventually because of the security concerns around REST. So REST started coming up. Okay, so JSON came almost along with the REST APIs, and JSON was also, new to the town, and people were thinking that it does not have standard like XML had, XSD and all those things. At that time, it was not there. So there was some, retaliation towards JSON in the beginning, but now everything is JSON. Everything is mostly JSON, right? So that happened. Then REST services started evolving, and suddenly microservices came in picture. It was not suddenly, but it had a reason. The reason was when SOA was there, it was heavy services splitted until back story where everything was together. So everything was together, got splitted into services, and each service was a heavy monolith basically. Now there was a problem of moving faster together. So because one service is heavy, its deployment time is so long, that other service which is depending on it cannot move further because this service is not able to move. These kind of when these kind of dynamics issues started coming, then people came into the microservice world where they told, let's split it still for even further and make it even smaller so that teams can develop it faster and take it faster. uh, you don't need to wait for the whole module to get developed, whatever it is there in that. In a smaller piece we can develop it and push it so that the next team which is depending on me can do their work. That's where the microservices started coming up. Now microservices had its own problem. Okay, it's not simple. It has a lot of things. It's complex. It has inter-service communication, inter-service encryption. All those things are there. Uh, but the problem happened is that people are not able to solve these problems. The transaction problem, the logging problem. If your service is touching multiple services, how do you do log tracing? So distributed logging kind of thing became a problem, and these problems are still the problem. A lot of people implement microservices without taking care of all these things, right? And microservices are costly also. If you have one monolith, one service as a monolith, if you want to deploy it in a HA mode, you need two VMs. I'm not talking about Dockers, just simple. So deploy it in two VMs, right? Now if you split that one monolith service into 5 microservices to deploy it in HA mode, now you need 10 VMs. Obviously, 2 VMs are costly, cheaper than 10 VMs, right? You would say, no, nowadays everything happens on Kubernetes and Docker and blah, blah, blah. Fine. Even if you are running 2 Docker images, that would be cheaper than running 10 Docker images. Because it would, to perform in the right way, it would take enough hardware, right? So that way it is costly also. So people started falling back to monolith, not exactly like it was, but in the SOA way mostly. They are making little lighter monoliths, but it is still monoliths, trying to avoid the inter-service communication, trying to avoid the inter-service transaction and those kind of issues, transaction management. So they are developing lighter monoliths nowadays. So and you can look into the internet. There would be topic floatings like microservices are dead, back to monolith kind of things, and written by prominent people, not people something like us, like me. So we are again falling back to the monolith, but in a smarter way, right? And a similar trend is happening even in front end. We will talk about that sometime. But this is the story. We started with from mainframes, we moved to the n-tier application. It evolved into Java EE, where EJB was there. That got settled, hated. Spring came in. Spring did some good work, and then came this. Along with that came this SOAP web services. SOA as a concept came. REST web services, microservice as a concept came. So microservice and SOA are the concepts. The SOAP and REST are the implementation. Right. You can do microservice without doing REST. You can do SOA without using SOAP. There's various of ways to do things. But this is the overall story. Now, this is the history. You can probably think that this is a history class for the backend of computer science, backend tech stack of the computer science. Okay, in between, I missed, in between there was multiple developments like Ruby came up, Node.js came up, but those things came up with the latest concept. Node.js came up, I guess. Node.js started, it didn't start with SOAP web services. I don't think, I have not done, but I don't think Node.js anybody does, ever did. Not now, to nobody does SOAP, but Node.js, I don't think it does SOAP. It does REST, right? So Ruby Rails came up. It picked up very well. Play Akka came up. Play with Scala, so that came up. It also got picked up. Not much, but yeah, it got picked up enough. And what else? Yeah, these are the basically prominent technologies. Obviously, PHP, Python are there. They are they are doing their work. But if you talk about top technologies in backend, it is even now it is Java, .NET, Node.js, and recently Golang. So that's there. So this is the evolution history of the backend. And if you think it made sense to you and it can make sense to a few other people, you can just share it with them. Thank you.